we should probably talk about a different direction here, because I mentioned this on the Monty and Wolf show when I realized kind of what was happening with a lot of these LCK teams, which is that there is going to be a crazy number of players that are free agents in this offseason, and that is going to coincide with the new kind of, what is it, SRFs, SFR, the Sporting Financial Regulations, which does
we'll
seem
just
to
add
be.
this, by the way. Y'all can actually miss me. You know what, the esports industry, their version of like the good morning tweet is when people just do the same debates years after years. Like, you know, when Slasher would be like, I think we should have surnames as the names, like the same boring topics, right? One of the worst ones ever is when everyone goes, well, everyone stop comparing it to sports. Then esports industry, call it the Sporting Financial Rules. Like, they can't help themselves, mate. They're the ones doing it. You're the ones who keep doing it, guys. Can we all get in the Olympics? And why would you compare this to a sport? Like, give me a break.
So there are teams that do have players that are contracted beyond this. So Faker notably is contracted through 2025, through the end of 2025. So it's not that they couldn't actually make some of these contracts work. There were just a lot of players that were going to come up at the end of their deals, including players that did have multi-year deals going into this one, like Chovy and Peanut. But this is all to say, this LCK offseason is going to be absolutely wild, because here is a...
Is there a list somewhere of all the names?
There's not a definitive... You have to look at everyone. So this is a non-definitive list, guys. Non-definitive list. But here are some of the big names that are going to be free agents. Chovy, Peanut, Thorin, Delight, Zeka, Canyon, Showmaker, Viper, Aiming, Lahens, Keen, Gumayushi, Keria, Zayas, Deft. All free agents.
The joke there, unironically, is you can not only make an LCK champ, you can actually make a world's champion out of, like, you could probably make two lineups out of that are like world's champions, man. Like, think about it. Like, literally, if I just take those players alone, right, I can already, if I want to do something like, I could just have like fucking Canyon, Chovy, and Viper all in one team. There's one. That's just one core for you. You can fill in the other two players. Then I can have like Keen, fucking Zeka, and Aiming. Like, already there's another one. Just fill that one out. You know, like, mate, you can actually make some banger lineups. Actually, I really hope. Bearing in mind, most of the time in LCK, particularly LCK, you tend to only go over to LPL. You don't do massive moves between teams very often. You stay in the same core. This might be the only time ever you get a complete reshuffle of LCK.
Yeah, BDD is contracted, to 2024, so he won't be moving on KT. But it is crazy, and it's seeming like I don't think
it's the most interesting to me, because there's so many different teams you could put him in. That'd be really interesting to me.
I think Chovy is quite loyal to Gen G, because he did reject other offers in order to join Gen G. And I know that the environment on Gen G and the treatment he receives there has been quite important to him. So he may end up sticking around. But the new regulations, I don't know if they've actually settled on what the dollar value is, which if you exceed it, you will start paying the luxury tax. So what the dollar value of the soft cap is. But I've heard it's probably going to be between $4 and $5 million a year. I still think they're hashing that out, and it may not have been entirely settled yet. But, that's still quite a lot of money for a League of Legends roster. But to assemble super teams with a budget of $4 to $5 million might be rather challenging unless players are willing to take a pay cut in order to be on those teams. Or a team really wants to spend a lot of money. Like, there's nothing preventing, especially the big corporate teams like Hanwha and KT and T1 spending more money than the cap and having that paying the luxury tax. Also, what's interesting about this, Thorin, is that contracts that were negotiated before the cap are exempted. I think they only count, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, pretty sure they only counted like 20% of their value as far as the cap hit goes. So it's interesting that there are so many players that are coming out of contract at this time, because if a team wanted to pay the premium and retain these players, or they had a multi-year deal, it wouldn't necessarily count against their,
Basically,
luxury
this is
cap
the off-season
total
to make a super team if you're going to do it.
Yes. but it's also potentially the most expensive season to make a super team.
And
or,
remember, there's also going to be the LPLs around some of these fucking players as well going on.
And
if,
LCS,
if these rules are going to apply now, I actually imagine this is the feeding frenzy off season then.
Yeah. I just want to put this in people's minds right now, because this amount of talent that you are going to see on auction in LCK is very rare to have all of these people come up at exactly the same time when it comes to their contracts. And, you know, some of
you think how pivotal some of these names are. Like, mate, Canyon and Showmaker are damn one. Like, what's damn one if they leave? Like, just an OK org again. Like, they'd be like Hanwha Life or something, wouldn't they?
Yeah. And you'd have to think that maybe there is a world where some of the bigger teams are going to want one of those players. The question is, do they split those players up who've been playing together virtually their entire career, and have that, you know, built-in synergy? Do they want to go to the same team together? But, you know,
I say, if I'm making these lineups, if I'm Chovy, I'm just calling fucking Canyon like, stop playing with that fucking bum Showmaker and come and get with the king. Exactly.
I don't know. Like I think Peanut's very important to Chovy's success. So I'm not sure Chovy would look better.
By definition, Monty, you are absolutely right. If it wasn't for Peanut in game 5s, Chovy's success would be very different in his career.
Oh, come on. It's not that Chovy himself.
He's been the most influential player on Chovy's success the last few years.
Chovy turned into a pumpkin at the last World Championship. Chovy reverted to his kind of pre-Peanut form. Peanut has actually leveled up Chovy in terms of his macro awareness significantly.
Well, in that case, you know what, Monty? I don't want this fucking brilliant Peanut to be laboured with Chovy anymore. I think he should go and play with BDD, and I'll take Canyon, just shitty old Canyon. Hasn't even won a title in years, Monty. I'll take little old Canyon in with me and Chovy and Viper, and you all can just fuck off with whoever you want. You can take whoever players you want, mate. I'll have Keen, Chovy, Canyon, and Viper. You can pick the support. I don't even mind, mate. I'm not greedy. I just want a few good pieces.
Lahens will be a free agent too, so there you go.
There you go.
Yeah, it is going to be wild. And I do think a lot of these players are going to stay in Korea. It's not like, you know, these players are going to be on small contracts. The best players are still going to be on 7-figure deals. It's just a matter of who wants to pay for them and if teams want to splash out for potential luxury taxes, which, you know, I don't think really Hanwha or T1 or KT will mind all that much. The crazy thing is that this roster with T1 is going to be coming apart because Owner has a contract through 2024, Faker through 2025, but the other 3 players are up at the end of this year. And the market for players like Zeus and Keria, who have shown such high peaks, and Gumayushi, who's been incredibly consistent this year, it's going to be pretty crazy.
Here's the problem, especially in light of all the shit that's going on now with Faker ways coming back, and they're going to maybe turn it around. But it's so clear that like the roster hasn't really functioned without Faker. That means you are now in probably the worst off season ever if you're T1. Because do you keep this core and try and make it work again? But you know that the day Faker ever stops playing, it's potentially scuffed lineup. Or do you actually do like, look, if you're going to do the actual NFL move, Monty, they should actually just scrap the core of T1 and say we try and get like a Chovy or a Showmaker or a Canyon. We should go for the big names. We're T1. Like we're a destination people want to go to. But if you do that, you are sort of throwing away what you did for the last 2 years in the bin. Unless, as you say, maybe you can get market value. Maybe someone really does want Keria and Zeus and they'll pay above the board price, you know.
I mean, the real losers in all of this are Keria, Gumayushi, and Zeus, who apparently can't play League of Legends in a macro or strategic sense without Faker. Does the value of their contract suddenly depreciate significantly? Because we've seen what happens when Faker isn't there to mind control them with shot calling in the game.
Basically, Monty, this is a skit you should do for the Monty and Wolf show. It should be the skit like you're selling like the old gear from the 80s, the toys, and it's like Faker sold separately. Because obviously the joke is like without the Faker, it's shit, isn't it? That's like not having a game in the Nintendo on Christmas. Like, yeah, thanks for the SNES, Grandma, but where's the fucking game, bitch? There's no games in this shit. They've built in. It's not like a Sega Mega Drive or whatever. Not from real history there, right? That's just
it's more. I think the better analogy is it's more like getting the Super Mario game cartridge, but not actually owning the machine to play it on, right? Okay. It's like, you know, the pieces are there, but you have no way to operate the damn thing, right? It's like, this is a good game. I know it is, but I don't have the thing that allows me to literally play the game of League of Legends, which is Faker's mind, apparently. I haven't seen the games yet because they happened last night, and we're recording this first thing in the morning for me. But T1 won 2 games in 23 minutes against Guangdong Freaks the first time Faker was back. So here we go again. It must be just that easy to slot him into this roster and at least get some a modicum of shot calling back within this team. So all I'll say for T1 is at least Faker is contracted. The thing is, are other players going to want to go to T1 when they know that Faker is the definitive king of this organization, right? Do they want to play Faker's game and listen to Faker at all times? Because he is the de facto coach of this team as well. And for veteran players, that may not be a very exciting possibility if they want to play the game a certain way themselves, because they're always, T1's always going to side with Faker. You know what I mean?
Faker is the Senate. So if you understand the reference, The thing is, though, when I actually do look at that list of names, my actual real hope is not any specific combination of players. What I really hope is this, that if most of those names end up staying within LCK, that they just make better, like, actual lineups. Like, even right now, the LCK has the same problem a lot of regions do, which is, like, you have good players who are just, like, on not that great lineups, and you could just make so many better lineups. Like, if you actually put all the talent together, dude, imagine, like, the top 5 you could make in the LCK. It could be really fucking sick, because obviously stylistically you'd pair people. Like, I think you could have some amazing lineups. Like, the strength of LCK being worse, it's more stylistic things, not the players. It's just amazing players in LCK.
Yeah, there are a lot of really good players. I think the GMing in Korea is quite poor. I think the players oftentimes have too much of a say in who gets onto these rosters, as opposed to make it, with their friends, as opposed to making rosters that make a lot of sense. But also, teams have not always been able to get their first choice. And so what happens is sometimes teams are heavily pursuing one player, that contract falls through, and they're forced to go to like their fourth choice at that role because they've all in this one player in this position, which makes the rosters really weird when it comes to glaring flaws. And also because LCK teams have been historically reluctant to make roster swaps either mid-split or in between spring and summer. They haven't been able to fix a lot of these problems either. And the problem with Hanwha Life with Glid probably wouldn't have been fixed unless there was out-of-game issues. And now we're seeing an improvement with them, especially through the jungle role. So I think these issues are a lot of times the way that the budgets are laid out and the contracts that are written, where it's difficult to get rid of players, or teams don't want to continue to pay out that contract even if they could make a potential upgrade at the role. And that does weaken the region as time goes on, because the reality of League of Legends as a game is that when you assemble rosters in November, you just have no idea what the meta or patch is going to be next year, because Riot hasn't completed their changes. So you're basically GMing in the dark. If you pick one kind of jungler and they change the jungle for the 30th time in this game's history, you might end up with a ganking jungler and a farm jungle meta, and the only time you can make an adjustment is between spring and summer to your roster. And also, just as an aside, back to the LEC format, one of the best things that the LEC format has allowed teams to do is to aggressively change rosters more frequently. Look at all the changes that happened with Vitality and Excel over the course of this year. If you were running 2 splits still, we wouldn't have been able to see this many roster adjustments within the league, which eventually enabled Excel to make top 2, right? So I think, the more breaks you have, it makes it more of a Counter-Strike system where teams are able to change rosters in between tournaments. And that period of adjustment means that there's something constantly to be excited for as a fan, because you want to see how the new roster does. And it makes it so teams are not locked into losing for extended periods of time. They can at least try and improve.
I've just looked it up now, and there's a piece of information. I looked up another player that's available at the end of this year with his contract. And so did you say Lehens is available as well?
Yeah.
Right. Well, here's the lineup I would make for 2024. Are you ready? There's one position I'm not going to fill. You guys can fill it. The top laner of this team is anyone who just plays tanks. That's it. You can pick who it is. Pick any LCK Korean player. The rest of the team goes like this, Monty. I've looked it up. This is all correct. I'm going to take Tarzan jungle. I'm going to take Chovy mid lane. Don't try and preempt me. You don't know where I'm going with this. I'm going to take Viper as my AD carry. I'm going to take Lehens as my support. And you know what? You're not going to believe this. For coach, I'm going to take CV Max from CDF, KDF. So basically, in spoiler, essentially, I'm actually making a no swords club. It's Griffin again. But now, because it's 2024, mate, that line of actually looks sick now. That actually looks fire now in 2024. That looks fucking sick.
I mean, you could also take Keen and just force him to play tanks because I don't think he cares. He's been totally fine.
Yeah, he'd win everything, wouldn't he? That's by the way, that's how you know what an insane set of talent that Griffin team was. Dude, in 2024, that would be a good lineup, like for real, like that, except for maybe Lens. There's not even any memes on that team. Like, all fucking
the
mega.
Griffin reunion.
Yeah.
I'm into it.
The sad thing is, when you go back and look at it, obviously people know Griffin never won any titles, right? Even Dan won. They won like 3 titles in Worlds. That's it. Like, those 2 cores had the potential to do everything. Like, when they both came up, they looked like they were like the new fucking SKT, like they were just going to rule for years. But it's why I actually do think a take that people, it's a mad underrated take this, but I think it's legit as fuck, mate. I actually think the history of League of Legends for Korean League of Legends players is ruined by Faker. Because you know how in basketball, almost every like discussion about a star player is ruined because Michael Jordan never lost a finals. So now if you lose 1 finals, they treat you like you're a bomb in basketball. So, well, Michael Jordan didn't lose. Well, because of Faker, right, being so clutch for all those first like 4 or 5 years, it means that everyone just assumes all Koreans are mega clutch, whereas actually they're not, dude. Like, they have the same amount of problems everyone does. Like, we just had a discussion about Peanut earlier. It took him fucking years to get legit in those scenarios. You think about some of the people in teams like Griffin, like, dude, they used to be in the finals every split and still not win. Like, it's one of the most overrated things. I think what people mistook was this: Faker is mega clutch, and then in general, Faker's teams take on that quite. It's actually why this era of Faker's teams not being clutch is also so sad. It shows that he doesn't have the like potency as an individual star to sort of carry you over the moments when people shit the bed or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
Because you can easily argue, by the way, if people don't know, I actually think as history's progressed, I think some of those SKT teams have been mega overrated. The ones that won Worlds, like, except for the season 3 one, dude, the season 5 and season 6 one, like, first of all, they're sometimes not even the best team. Like, they just win the tournament. And then secondly, they're definitely not the best player at every position. They're more just like a really nice like identity. They play the same style. They can come from behind. Like, if you actually look at the modern day SKT, dude, the SKT of the last 2 years is a really fucking skilled lineup. Like, there's some really insane players on. It just hasn't had the results. It just shows how teams are more than some of their parts, or less sometimes.
And the entire narrative on SKT would have changed if they had just won MSI or Worlds. Just one of them. Yes. Just one of them. Just one. Yeah. They only had to win one, and we would be talking about this team entirely differently. Instead, they are now the choker roster, right? Instead of literally, if they win one international tournament, one of the 2 MSIs or Worlds last year, they go from being the choker team into being a team that has made all these consecutive finals and is a success.
I always say it like this, because if you notice in Counter-Strike, we've had some of the best examples as ever. If people don't know, people like Device and Carrigan were the ultimate chokers, and now they're some of the most decorated players ever for winning the biggest tournaments. Like, what I've found is this: there's 2 aspects to it that fuck you if you keep having like you're talking about. Is once you have a bunch of early times that you choke and you lose, it gets in your heads next time. So now you're thinking, and then even worse, eventually when you've done it more than a couple of times, your opponent knows you're going to choke as well. So he's just even waiting. And it's almost like in the battle, even if he's losing, he knows that if I just hang around, he's going to give me a chance back in this game. It's the opposite. Like you're saying, if you just win one of them early, that sort of breaks the sort of like the dock, as it were, like the rot that you were stuck in. All of a sudden, your opponent doesn't think, oh, you just won the last championship. He wouldn't think that way. But you yourself think, well, I've come through it before. Because if you don't know, guys, the 2 examples I gave from Counter-Strike there, it went the other way around. Like, Carrigan now makes all the amazing calls at the end of the game because he just won so much. Device became one of the most clutch players at the majors. Like, you can actually completely 180 the narrative because, like I say, it applies to you yourself. But then also, like, people treat you differently because of how it went in the past. Because to me, the obvious one is that MSI one. If they just won that bullshit MSI with the RNG shit with online and stuff, no one would have had this conversation anymore. Whereas because they lost that one, mate, once they got to like game 5 against DRX, you already knew it was possible. Even though on paper they should still win, you were just like, oh, bloody hell, is this going to happen again? Is this going to happen again?
Yeah.
And DRX actually also proved, by the way, even being clutch can be overrated because they were mega clutch in that Worlds, but they were still one of the worst teams to ever win.
Yeah, they certainly were. I mean, arguably outside of Fnatic, we don't count, the worst team to ever win. The Samsung team was pretty bad too, but anyway.
It was. The joke is that team's only going to look better because it has Ruler on now. Like, That really was not that great a lineup, that team.
No.
That's why the real ones who did blow that were like Longzhu, RNG. Like, these are the teams that should have won that tournament.
Yeah. I think also when we talk about the clutch factor versus the choking factor, it is such a psychological edge for the opponent that you're playing against as well, because even if you are crushing them in the early game, or you're up to, they're up 2-0, a lot of teams would just mentally give up at that point in time. But the fact that you have lost all these finals now gives your opponent, insane hope, and like a fight, they'll fight to the last if they know that you have this reputation as a choker. Whereas if you have a reputation that you just close people the fuck out and destroy them, people mentally give up in that situation. It's like, it's over at this point in time. And that psychology is hugely important to the way that teams play these games and the way they approach big matches, right?
There's an analogy that Kenny Smith on Inside the NBA used to say, which perfectly explains this, Monty. He said, when you're really young, the way you know when you finally crossed over and all the other players think you're old and washed, he said, when you're young and you like steal the ball from someone, because you've just got a breakaway, you look behind you for a second and then there's a million miles behind you, you just slam the ball easily. He said, when you're old, when you steal the ball, you look behind you, the guy's just like this. It's like, because he knows he can catch you, like he can just run you down that way. It's the same shit, exactly like you're saying. Like, if they know you choke, but even they're just thinking, like, just hang in there, give ourselves a chance. Whereas if you just close them out, that's mega intimidating. You think people actually will play worse against that, if anything. By the way, I've got a question for you, though. In light of all those players there, who would you want to see go to a specific team, or who would you want to see team up? Remember, you almost have like a smorgasbord of all the great players of the last 4 or 5 years. So who would you want to, like, what combos, like I did the Canyon Chovy one because we just never had that before. What would be like an interesting combo for you, or who do you want to see play together?
So I got to take my guy Keen, just because he's so versatile at this point in time that he can do anything. It's like, 369 is playing mostly tanks right now, even though he certainly can play other things because he's fitting to the team identity of JDG and he knows his role within the team. So regardless of meta, I would be confident that Keen could kind of take the reins. Would love to see Viper on that team. Get Viper a good fucking team again, please. I would, either Lehens or Delight. I think they're both performing extremely well right now. If you pair those guys with Viper, I think there is going to be a really good opportunity for success. I also might be low-key interested in seeing Keria with Viper. That could be really fascinating from a meta perspective. Yeah, Keria hasn't been very good recently, but we saw his heights earlier this year in the spring. And I think mostly that's a motivation issue for Keria rather than that he is bad. He's mechanically excellent. So I'll take the Keria Viper combo. And with Keen, then you know what? Fuck it, man. I'm taking Peanut and Chovy together because you need shot calling on this team, and Peanut at least will provide that. You have enough other star power that if Peanut does his job of pathing super well early and having that synergy with Chovy, I'll just keep that rolling. So there you go. Keen, Peanut, Chovy, Viper, Keria.
Okay.
There's a banger.
I've got one for you. Mine also does work. I looked it up online. I double checked that it will actually be right in terms of all the availability. So what I would do is I would make a team of these players. And I'll just do some of them first for the free agents so then we can get to right. So in top lane, I would have Keen as well. He's an amazing player, probably the best in the world. I'd have Canyon because he's just a beast at jungle. He can just define the whole team. I would have Kerry as my support. He was maybe the best player in the world. He's just revolutionized support. And then what I'd do is for mid lane, I would have Froggen, and then I would have Upset for AD carry. Now here's the thing. For the Korean players, that really sucks because I've ruined the team for you there. But this is just my teams. I'm making it for my own pleasure, and they're all available. Upset's contract ends at the end of the year, so that's a team I would make.
Drag Froggen out of retirement.
Yeah. Look, I can't lie. There would be a moment where the Koreans came to me and through a translator circle in broken English said, but why though? Can't we just have Chovy? I'd be like, listen, it's a whole thing. I'll get into it later when we win Worlds. Also, I'd just love to see a thing where they're like, but Froggen, is he even good? Like, shut your fucking bitch mouth. He almost won an OGN when you were 4 years old. How dare you, Canyon? Or whoever the fuck would say that. Almost did win OGN, guys. Almost.
Yeah. So LCK offseason, definitely going to be a banger. We will be keeping our eyes on that, guys, as it unfolds. in the post Worlds landscape.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.